What happens when the person you trusted with your heart, your soul, and your life betrays you in the most painful way imaginable? Simone thought her love was unbreakable, built on trust, loyalty, and an unshakable belief in each other. But when her husband Ethan shattered that trust by embracing another woman, Simone's world came crashing down. Yet this is not a story of defeat. It's a story of resilience. It's about a woman who chose not to let betrayal define her, but to use it as a catalyst for her own strength and transformation. Simone's journey was never about getting back at the person who hurt her. It was about rediscovering the most important love of all, the love for herself. In the face of heartbreak, she found her inner power, and through her pain, she became a beacon of hope for others. This is a story of courage, of a woman rising from the ashes of betrayal, refusing to let anyone or anything dim her light. It's a reminder that even when we're broken, we can always rebuild ourselves stronger, braver, and more determined than ever to live a life that is worthy of our own love and respect. Welcome to our family. We're so glad you've joined us on this journey of love, strength, and resilience. Here, we believe in lifting each other up, sharing stories that inspire, and embracing the power of self-love. You're not just a viewer, you're part of a community that believes in turning challenges into triumphs. So grab a seat, get comfortable, and let's walk this path together. You are never alone in this family. Like, comment, and subscribe to follow more powerful journeys of resilience and self-love. Simone was the embodiment of elegance and intelligence, her beauty radiating from within. Her caramel-toned skin glowed under the sunlight. Her eyes sparkled with a warmth that drew people in, and her smile could light up the darkest of days. From the moment she met Ethan, her world had changed. Ethan was the kind of man who seemed too perfect to be real. His piercing blue eyes, confident demeanor, and charming wit had captivated her heart almost instantly. When Ethan proposed, it wasn't just his words that won her over. It was the sincerity in his voice. "Simone," he had said, kneeling before her with a diamond ring, "you are my everything. I promise to love and cherish you always." Those words became her foundation, a promise she clung to in every moment of doubt or fear. Their wedding was a dream, an intimate celebration of two souls intertwining against the odds. Friends and family whispered about their interracial marriage, but Simone brushed it off. To her, love wasn't about the color of their skin. It was about the purity of their hearts. Ethan, she believed, shared the same conviction. As a businessman, Ethan's schedule was hectic, but Simone was his unwavering support system. She woke up early to prepare his favorite breakfast, stayed up late to listen to his work dilemmas, and celebrated every milestone with him as though it were her own. She adored him, not just for his successes, but for the way he made her feel. Safe, loved, and valued. When he faced challenges at work, she was his rock. "We'll get through this together," she would say, holding his hands tightly, her voice filled with conviction. Ethan would smile at her, his eyes softening with gratitude, and she felt proud to be the woman who stood by his side. But as time passed, small changes in Ethan's behavior began to surface. He seemed distracted, his once thoughtful gestures becoming sporadic. When she asked if everything was okay, he would brush her concerns aside, saying, "Work's just been stressful lately." Simone believed him because she trusted him. Her loyalty wasn't just an act of love, it was a principle she lived by. Simone had always believed that love required patience and understanding. She was willing to fight for their marriage, to stand by Ethan no matter what. She dismissed the whispers of doubt from friends and family who questioned his long hours and sudden absences. "Ethan would never hurt me," she would reply with a calm confidence that silenced their concerns. Yet beneath her unwavering faith in him, a faint shadow of unease began to creep into her heart. It wasn't that she doubted Ethan. It was the subtle changes in their relationship that unsettled her. The way he avoided her gaze during dinner, the hushed phone calls late at night, and the lingering scent of perfume that wasn't hers. Simone chose to ignore these signs, convincing herself that her love was strong enough to weather any storm. She reminded herself of the man she had married, the man who had promised to cherish her forever. But little did she know, her devotion was about to be tested in ways she could never have imagined. The foundation of trust she had built her life upon was beginning to crack, but Simone clung to the hope that it was all in her imagination. After all, love wasn't supposed to hurt, was it? Her heart told her to stay, to believe in the man she loved. And so she continued to pour her soul into their marriage, unaware that the truth would soon unravel in the most heartbreaking way. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when Maya decided to stop by her sister Simone's home unannounced. Maya, always fiercely protective of Simone, loved catching up over coffee and laughter. As she approached the house, she noticed Ethan's car wasn't in the driveway. "Work again," Maya murmured to herself, shaking her head. Ethan's long hours had become a regular topic of conversation, and while Simone defended him, Maya wasn't entirely convinced. Later that evening, Maya went out for dinner at a cozy restaurant downtown. The air smelled of roasted coffee and baked bread, and the soft glow of candlelight made the evening feel serene. She was about to order when her eyes caught a familiar figure at a nearby table. It was Ethan, but he wasn't alone. Maya froze, her gaze locking onto him. Across from Ethan sat a blonde woman, her hair cascading like golden silk. The woman leaned in close, her laughter tinkling like wind chimes as Ethan whispered something to her. Then, Maya's heart dropped. Ethan reached across the table and intertwined his fingers with hers. For a moment, Maya couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her protective instincts kicked in, and anger surged through her veins. She marched toward the table, her heels clicking loudly against the tiled floor. "Ethan!" she snapped, her voice a mixture of disbelief and fury. Ethan's face paled as he turned to see Maya standing there. The blonde woman pulled her hand away, looking uncomfortable. Ethan quickly stood up, his usual confidence replaced by nervousness. "Maya, this isn't what it looks like," he stammered. Maya folded her arms, her sharp eyes boring into him. "Really? Because it looks like you're on a date with someone who isn't my sister." The blonde woman glanced at Ethan, clearly waiting for him to handle the situation. Ethan, attempting to regain composure, forced a chuckle. "This is just a business meeting. My colleague here, we were discussing a project." Maya wasn't buying it. "Do all your business meetings involve hand-holding and whispering sweet nothings?" She shot back, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Ethan sighed, his facade cracking. "Maya, you're misunderstanding. Let's not make a scene here." Maya wasn't one to let things slide, but she also knew Simone deserved to hear this first. With a glare that could cut glass, she spat, "I'm telling Simone about this. She deserves to know." Without waiting for his response, she stormed out of the restaurant, her mind racing. The next day, Maya arrived at Simone's house, her heart heavy with the burden of what she had seen. She found Simone in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared tea. Her sister's serene demeanor made Maya hesitate for a moment. How could she break her heart with the truth? "Maya, you're here early," Simone said, smiling warmly. "Tea?" Maya shook her head, her expression grave. "Simone, we need to talk." Simone noticed the tension in her sister's voice and set the teapot down. "What's wrong?" Taking a deep breath, Maya recounted the events of the previous evening, her voice trembling with anger and sadness. She described the restaurant, the blonde woman, and Ethan's excuses. Simone listened in silence, her face calm but unreadable. When Maya finished, Simone took a deep breath and gave a small, confident smile. "Maya, I appreciate you telling me this, but you've misunderstood Ethan." "Misunderstood?" Maya repeated incredulously. "Simone, I saw it with my own eyes. He was holding her hand." Simone's voice remained steady. "Ethan would never betray me. He loves me. Whatever you saw, there's an explanation for it. I trust him. Maya stared at her sister, disbelief etched across her face. Simone, you're too blind to see the truth. Open your eyes. Simone shook her head, her tone gentle but firm. I know Ethan. You don't. He would never hurt me. Maya left that day feeling defeated and helpless, her words falling on deaf ears. Simone's unwavering faith in Ethan blinded her to the possibility of betrayal, but deep down, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that her sister was walking into heartbreak. Simone, meanwhile, pushed aside Maya's warnings, convincing herself that her love for Ethan was unshakable. Yet, a tiny voice in the back of her mind whispered doubts she refused to acknowledge. As she carried on with her day, that unease began to grow, setting the stage for a revelation she wasn't prepared for. Mrs. Johnson was a woman of wisdom, her years of experience etched into the gentle lines of her face. She had raised Simone and her sister Maya with love, teaching them the value of self-respect and the importance of trusting their instincts. On this particular Saturday, Mrs. Johnson decided to treat herself to a day at the mall, enjoying the lively bustle of shoppers and the festive air of the season. As she browsed the aisles of a home goods store, a familiar laugh caught her attention. Turning her head, she spotted Ethan just a few steps away, standing near the checkout counter. Relief washed over her at first. She adored Ethan and always appreciated how he treated Simone. But her smile faltered when she noticed he wasn't alone. A striking blonde woman stood beside Ethan, her arm casually brushing against his as they spoke. Their body language was unmistakably intimate, leaning toward each other, sharing quiet laughter, and exchanging glances that seemed to carry secrets. Ethan held a shopping bag in one hand while gesturing animatedly with the other, and the woman's delighted laughter filled the air. Mrs. Johnson's chest tightened. She watched as Ethan leaned in closer to whisper something, prompting the woman to place a hand on his arm, her expression warm and affectionate. This wasn't the behavior of a husband on a casual shopping trip. Her heart pounding, Mrs. Johnson quickly turned away, her mind racing. Could Maya have been right? She had dismissed her younger daughter's concerns about Ethan, trusting Simone's unwavering faith in him. But now, seeing this scene unfold before her, doubt began to creep in. Mrs. Johnson left the store, her usual steady steps quickened by urgency. She knew she had to tell Simone no matter how much it might hurt her. As a mother, she couldn't sit back and watch her daughter potentially live a lie. Back at Simone's house, Mrs. Johnson arrived, to find her daughter arranging fresh flowers in a vase. The sight of Simone's peaceful demeanor only made the conversation ahead more painful. "Mom," Simone greeted warmly, hugging her mother. "This is a nice surprise." Mrs. Johnson forced a smile, her heart heavy. She sat down at the kitchen table, clasping her hands together as she gathered her thoughts. "Simone," she began gently, "I need to talk to you about Ethan." Simone paused, her brow furrowing. "What about Ethan?" Taking a deep breath, Mrs. Johnson recounted what she had seen at the mall. The shopping bags, the intimate laughter, and the way Ethan and the blonde woman had seemed so comfortable together. Her voice wavered with concern, and her eyes searched Simone's face for a reaction. Simone listened quietly, her hands stilling as she placed the last flower in the vase. When her mother finished, Simone's lips pressed into a thin line. She pulled out a chair and sat across from her mother, her expression calm and resolute. "Mom," Simone said softly, "I appreciate you telling me this, but I think you misunderstood the situation." "Simone," Mrs. Johnson said, her voice trembling, "I know what I saw. Ethan wasn't acting like a married man. That woman, there was something between them. You have to see that." Simone reached out and placed a hand on her mother's. "I know you're worried, but Ethan isn't like that. He's a good man, Mom. He loves me, and he would never do something to hurt me." Maybe it was just a business meeting, or maybe you misinterpreted their body language. Mrs. Johnson shook her head, frustration seeping into her voice. Simone, I saw the way they looked at each other. It wasn't professional, and it wasn't innocent. You have to consider the possibility. No, Mom, Simone interrupted, her tone firm but not unkind. I trust Ethan completely. Our marriage is built on love and loyalty, and I won't let doubt creep in just because of a misunderstanding. Mrs. Johnson's heart ached as she looked at her daughter, so steadfast in her belief in Ethan. She wanted to argue, to shake Simone out of her blind faith, but she knew her daughter's stubborn nature. Simone wouldn't believe anything until she saw it for herself. All right, Mrs. Johnson said quietly, standing up. But Simone, promise me one thing. Keep your eyes open. Love can be blind, and sometimes we see only what we want to see. Simone nodded, though her confidence remained unshaken. I will, Mom, but I'm sure there's nothing to worry about. As Mrs. Johnson left, a sense of foreboding lingered in her heart. She prayed that she was wrong, that Simone's trust in Ethan wasn't misplaced, but deep down, she feared that the truth would eventually come to light, and that it would break her daughter's heart. Simone's life, once a picture of marital bliss, began to shift in ways she couldn't ignore. Ethan, her once attentive husband, seemed different. It started with the little things. A missed goodnight kiss, hurried excuses for working late, and a subtle coldness in his touch. At first, Simone told herself it was stress. Ethan's work as a businessman was demanding, and she wanted to be the supportive wife he deserved. But as days turned into weeks, the changes became more pronounced. Ethan's once vibrant laughter had dulled, replaced by distant murmurs on phone calls he always took in another room. He started coming home later, his explanations vague and dismissive. Just a late meeting, he would say, avoiding her questioning eyes. Simone noticed his phone was always on silent, a stark contrast to how freely he used to share his life with her. Text messages would light up the screen, but he never let her see them, quickly turning the phone face down. When she asked about it, Ethan brushed her off with a strained smile. It's just work stuff, Simone. Nothing for you to worry about. Simone wanted to believe him. She reminded herself of the promises they had made to each other, the love they had built their life upon. But late at night, lying awake in their bed, the unease gnawed at her. Memories of Maya's confrontation and her mother's warning replayed in her mind like a haunting melody. Her heart was torn. Simone loved Ethan deeply, and the thought of doubting him felt like a betrayal in itself. Yet, she couldn't ignore the subtle but undeniable shift in their relationship. She began to pay closer attention, noticing how his cologne lingered longer when he returned home, as if he had reapplied it recently. His wardrobe choices had become more meticulous even on days when he claimed to have no meetings. One evening, as she cleaned out the pockets of his suit jacket, her fingers brushed against something unexpected, a receipt from an upscale restaurant. The date and time didn't match any occasion she could recall. Simone stared at the slip of paper, her chest tightening as questions flooded her mind. Had Ethan lied to her? Was he meeting someone else? Simone tried to push the doubts away, but they clung to her like shadows. Her mother's voice echoed in her thoughts. Love can be blind, Simone. Sometimes we see only what we want to see. The following days were a blur of unease and internal conflict. Simone began to observe Ethan more closely, searching for clues in his behavior. She noticed how his smile no longer reached his eyes, how he avoided her gaze during dinner, and how his touch felt distant, like an echo of the man she had once known. One night, as they sat together on the couch, Ethan's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Simone glanced at the screen and saw a name she didn't recognize. Before she could ask, Ethan quickly grabbed the phone, his face tense. Just a work thing, he muttered, standing up and walking out of the room to take the call. Simone's heart sank. This wasn't the Ethan she knew. the man who used to share everything with her, who once made her feel like the center of his world. Determined to uncover the truth, Simone decided to approach the situation carefully. She didn't want to jump to conclusions or accuse Ethan without evidence. Instead, she would rely on her intelligence and intuition to get to the bottom of things. Late one night, after Ethan had fallen asleep, Simone quietly got out of bed. She tiptoed to his phone, which he had left on the dresser. Her hands trembled as she picked it up, unsure of what she was even looking for. But the phone was locked, and the realization hit her. Ethan had changed his passcode. The gesture felt like a blow to her chest. Why would he need to hide something from her? Simone placed the phone back where she found it, her mind racing. Her love for Ethan clashed with the growing suspicion in her heart. She decided then and there that she couldn't continue to live in doubt. She would find a way to uncover the truth, but she would do it on her own terms. Simone resolved to act calmly and strategically, hiding her suspicions from Ethan. She knew she had to be careful, for the truth, whatever it was, could shatter the life they had built together. As she lay back down in bed, she stared at the ceiling, a single tear slipping down her cheek. I need to know the truth, she thought to herself, her heart heavy with dread. Even if it breaks me. Unbeknownst to Ethan, the seeds of suspicion had taken root in Simone's heart, and she was ready to uncover the secrets he was hiding. The love that had once blinded her was now giving her the strength to confront the darkness lurking in their marriage. The tension between Simone and Ethan had become almost tangible, but Simone hid her growing suspicions with an air of calm. One evening during dinner, as they sat across from each other, the flickering candlelight casting soft shadows, Simone decided it was time to put her plan into action. She paused mid-bite, reaching up to rub her eyes with a wince. Ethan, she said softly, her voice tinged with concern. My eyes have been hurting a lot lately. It's like everything's blurry and I can barely see anything. Ethan's fork froze halfway to his mouth, his expression flickering with something Simone couldn't quite place. Concern, perhaps? Or was it relief? Maybe you should see a doctor, he said, setting his fork down and leaning forward. Simone shook her head. I'm sure it's just temporary. Maybe I've been straining them too much. I'll rest, and it'll pass. The next morning, Simone took her plan a step further. She pretended to lose her sight entirely, moving cautiously around the house and bumping into furniture. She feigned frustration, groping for countertops and chairs as if navigating her home had suddenly become a challenge. Ethan, she called out from the living room, her voice trembling with practiced vulnerability. Can you help me find my glasses? I think I dropped them somewhere. Ethan rushed to her side, guiding her to the couch. Simone, are you okay? Maybe we should go to the hospital. Simone shook her head, her lips trembling in an act of resignation. I don't want to burden you with this, Ethan. You already have so much on your plate with work. I'll manage. Ethan placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, but said nothing. Over the next few days, Simone continued her act, stumbling over rugs and knocking over objects. At first, Ethan appeared genuinely concerned, offering to help her with small tasks around the house. But as the days passed, his worry seemed to fade, replaced by a peculiar sense of ease. Simone noticed the change immediately. Ethan started leaving his phone out on the table again, no longer rushing to answer messages in another room. He spent more time smiling to himself, and she often caught him humming softly, an unusual shift in his demeanor. One afternoon, as Simone sat on the couch pretending to read a book she couldn't see, Ethan stepped into the kitchen. She heard the soft click of his phone being unlocked, followed by a hushed voice. She can't see anymore, Ethan said, his tone low and conspiratorial. Come over tonight, there's nothing to worry about. Simone's heart clenched at his words, each one stabbing at her like a dagger. She tightened her grip on the book, forcing herself to remain composed. Her breathing slowed as she willed herself to stay calm, even as her world seemed to crumble around her. That evening, Simone prepared herself for the confrontation she knew was coming. She moved around the house, with careful precision, pretending to fumble as she set the dinner table for Ethan's return. Her mind raced, replaying his words over and over. "Come over tonight." When Ethan walked through the door, his smile was wide and carefree. He kissed Simone on the cheek, a brief, almost dismissive gesture, and headed upstairs without a word. Simone's heart raced as she waited, listening intently. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Ethan's voice floated down the stairs as he greeted someone. Simone strained to hear but couldn't make out the words. She remained seated, her hands folded in her lap, as footsteps ascended to the bedroom above. Summoning her courage, Simone stood and made her way upstairs, her steps careful and measured. Outside the bedroom door, she paused, her hand trembling as it hovered over the doorknob. She pressed her ear to the door and heard hushed laughter, followed by a woman's voice. A voice that wasn't hers. Simone's heart shattered as she heard Ethan's voice, warm and affectionate in a way she hadn't experienced in weeks. She couldn't bear to listen any longer. Gathering herself, she silently opened the door just a crack. The scene inside was everything she feared. Ethan was sitting on the bed, his arms wrapped around the blonde woman Simone had heard so much about. Their closeness, the way they looked at each other, it left no room for doubt. Simone's breath caught in her throat, but she didn't let out a sound. She stood there for a moment, watching the man she had given her life to betray her so casually. Her chest tightened, but she forced herself to remain composed. She had to see it all, to witness the truth she had been denying for so long. Finally, she stepped back, quietly closing the door. Tears streamed down her face as she returned to the living room, her heart breaking with each step. But amid the pain, a fire ignited within her, a determination to take control of her life and confront the betrayal head-on. As Simone sat on the couch, wiping her tears, she made a silent vow. This ends tonight. The deception, the lies, the betrayal. She would no longer be a victim of Ethan's selfishness. It was time for the truth to come to light, no matter how much it hurt. The air in the house was heavy with deceit that evening, a weight Simone carried alone as she prepared herself for what she knew was coming. She sat in the living room, her hands folded in her lap, pretending to be oblivious. Her heart raced with a mix of dread and determination as the sound of Ethan's voice greeted the visitor at the door. "Come in," Ethan said, his tone warm and inviting. Simone listened intently, her breath shallow as light footsteps echoed through the hallway. A soft, feminine laugh followed, one she instantly recognized. It was the same voice her mother had described from the shopping mall encounter. Simone's chest tightened, but she stayed motionless, her eyes trained on the faint reflection in the glass of a nearby picture frame. She could see their outlines, Ethan leaning in close, the blonde woman smiling up at him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The pair moved upstairs, their laughter growing softer as they disappeared into the bedroom Simone had once considered a sanctuary. A place of love, trust, and shared dreams now felt tainted, a hollow shell of what it used to be. Simone's hands trembled, her nails digging into her palms as she fought the urge to confront them immediately. But she knew she couldn't let her emotions dictate her actions. This moment wasn't just about heartbreak, it was about uncovering the truth and reclaiming her dignity. Minutes felt like hours as Simone quietly rose from her chair, moving toward the staircase with deliberate steps. She paused halfway up, her breath catching as she heard muffled voices and soft laughter from behind the closed bedroom door. Simone spent the next hour alone, her mind racing as she crafted her plan. This betrayal would not define her, nor would it break her spirit. She would face Ethan and the truth, but she would do so on her terms, with dignity and grace. When Ethan finally returned downstairs, his demeanor was casual, almost smug. He kissed Simone on the cheek as though nothing had happened, his facade of concern for her blindness still intact. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice laced with feigned kindness. Simone forced a smile, her eyes masking the storm brewing within her. "I'm fine," she replied softly. "Just tired." Ethan nodded, clearly relieved, and disappeared into the kitchen. Simone watched him go, her heart aching but her resolve unshaken. That night, as she lay in bed pretending to sleep, Simone made a vow to herself. She would not let this betrayal define her worth or destroy her spirit. Instead, she would rise above it, showing Ethan and the world that a woman's strength is not in her ability to endure betrayal, but in her power to reclaim her life and stand tall. Simone's pain was real, raw, and overwhelming, but it would not consume her. She was determined to turn this heartbreak into a story of resilience, one that would inspire others to find their strength in the face of betrayal. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow across the living room where Simone sat, waiting. Her heart was steady now, no longer torn apart by the events of the previous night. Instead, it was fortified by a resolve she hadn't known she possessed. Ethan entered the room, yawning and stretching, his expression one of casual indifference. But when his eyes met Simone's piercing gaze, he froze mid-step. She was staring directly at him, her eyes clear, sharp, and undeniably focused. You can see?" he stammered, his voice cracking under the weight of his shock. Simone's response was calm, but carried a sharp edge, like the calm before a storm. "I could see everything last night, Ethan. Every single thing." Ethan's face drained of color, his confident facade crumbling in an instant. Before he could respond, the faint sound of hurried footsteps came from upstairs. His girlfriend appeared in the hallway, her face flushed with embarrassment. She froze when she saw Simone, then quickly grabbed her bag and darted toward the front door without a word. Simone stood, her presence commanding and unshakable. For a moment, the room was silent, save for the faint sound of the door closing behind the fleeing woman. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but Simone raised a hand, silencing him with a single gesture. "I loved you, Ethan," Simone began, her voice steady but brimming with emotion. "I loved you with every part of my soul. I stood by you when everyone else doubted us. I trusted you when my family warned me. I built my life around you because I believed in the promises you made to me." Tears threatened to well up in her eyes, but she blinked them away, refusing to let them fall. "But you took that trust and shattered it. You made me question my own worth, my own instincts. And for what? For a fleeting thrill? For someone who would betray another woman without a second thought?" Ethan's lips moved, but no words came out. He looked as though he had been struck, his hands fidgeting nervously as he tried to piece together a response. Simone didn't give him the chance. She stepped closer, her voice growing firmer with each word. "I will not cry for you, Ethan. I will not beg you to stay. You've made your choices, and now I'm making mine. I deserve better than this. I deserve better than you. And I will not allow your betrayal to define who I am." Ethan reached out as if to touch her, but Simone stepped back, her expression unyielding. "Don't," she said firmly. "It's too late for apologies. Too late for explanations. The trust we had is gone, and there's no bringing it back." Simone turned and walked toward the door, her movements slow and deliberate. "I'm leaving this house," she said without turning around. "And I'm leaving you behind." The next day, Simone filed for divorce. She didn't waver or second-guess her decision. For her, it was the only path forward, a step toward reclaiming her life and self-worth. The process wasn't easy, but Simone faced it with dignity and grace, refusing to let Ethan's betrayal break her spirit. Word of her courage spread through the community, and women from all walks of life reached out to her, sharing their own stories of heartbreak and resilience. Inspired by their support, Simone decided to turn her pain into purpose. She launched a foundation dedicated to helping women who had experienced betrayal and emotional abuse. Through workshops, counseling, and support networks, the foundation became a beacon of hope, teaching women to reclaim their strength and find their voices. Simone's journey was far from easy, but it was one of transformation and empowerment. She had been betrayed in the most devastating way, but she refused to let it define her. Instead, she rose from the ashes of her broken marriage, stronger and more determined than ever. Simone's story became an inspiration to countless others, a testament to the power of self-respect and resilience. She showed the world that even in the face of profound heartbreak, dignity could prevail and hope could thrive. And though her heart bore the scars of betrayal, Simone walked forward with her head held high, knowing that her worth was never tied to the actions of another, but to the strength and grace she carried within herself. Simone's journey became a story that resonated far beyond the walls of her home. Her courage to stand up for herself, even in the face of profound heartbreak, became a beacon of hope for those who felt trapped in the shadows of betrayal. Her foundation flourished, offering workshops, counseling, and safe spaces for women to heal and rediscover their worth. The women who walked through its doors often arrived broken, but they left stronger, their heads held high, armed with the tools to reclaim their lives. Simone's voice became a powerful force for change. She spoke at conferences and community events, her words filled with wisdom and compassion. "Love can blind us," she often said, "but self-respect will always guide us back to the light." Her story was not one of defeat but of triumph. It was proof that heartbreak didn't have to define the rest of one's life, that even the deepest wounds could heal with time, resilience, and self-love. Simone's strength also had a ripple effect on her family. Maya and Mrs. Johnson, who had once been dismissed in their warnings, stood by her side through the storm, proud of the woman she had become. Their bond as a family deepened, built on trust, forgiveness, and mutual support. And Ethan? He faded into the background, a stark reminder of the cost of betrayal. While he attempted to mend his reputation, he could never escape the shadow of the woman who had shown the world what true dignity looked like. Simone's life wasn't without challenges, but each step forward reminded her of the strength she carried within. She found joy in small things, laughter shared with her family, the fulfillment of helping others, and the quiet moments where she felt at peace with herself. In time, she discovered love again, not the kind built on promises and appearances, but a love rooted in honesty, respect, and mutual understanding. It was a love that honored her journey and celebrated her resilience. Simone's legacy was clear. Betrayal could be turned into strength, heartbreak into healing, and pain into purpose. Her story reminded everyone who heard it that true love begins with loving oneself, and that dignity is never something to be compromised. As she stood on the stage at an event celebrating her foundation's 5th anniversary, Simone looked out at the crowd, a sea of faces filled with hope and gratitude. She smiled, her heart full, knowing that her story had made a difference. And in that moment, Simone wasn't just a survivor of betrayal. She was a symbol of triumph, a reminder that even in our darkest hours, the light within us has the power to illuminate the way forward.